Namaste everyone. Welcome to the Bharatvaarta Weekly. I'm Roshan Karyappa. I have with me Neerav Kanodra and Abhishek Paul to discuss the news and views of the week that was. So, on the weekly today, we'll be discussing a few things. The unfortunate case of an Indian student being shot dead in Canada. The US, how India is helping Sri Lanka during its unprecedented economic crisis. The COVID XE variant and how Shanghai is dealing with it with lockdowns and everything, and plenty more. So, welcome. Thank you for making it. So, Abhishek and Nirav, how are things at your end?
Doing good, Terry. How are you?
Yeah, going all right. I think the summer is, picking up, right? I mean, I'm saying this in Bangalore, which is, of course, perhaps the mildest of mild summers, I suppose, in India.
Yeah,
But yeah. So we'll begin with the first piece of news. In an unfortunate incident, an Indian student aged 21 was found shot dead in Canada. Karthik Vasudev, a resident of Ghaziabad, was shot outside a subway station in Toronto on Thursday evening. While he received medical attention by an off duty paramedic, he later succumbed to his injuries upon being rushed to the hospital. While police think that it was a robbery gone wrong, his family suspects that it's a hate crime. His father has also given multiple statements to the press, shedding light on the poor communication by the embassy and Canadian authorities. External Affairs Minister Mr. S. Jaishankar expressed his condolences to the family over the issue. Back in Canada, Karthik's friends and batchmates from the university organized a prayer ceremony in his memory. Nirav, it's pretty unfortunate, right? And not something that you generally get from Canada.
Yeah, actually, like a lot of the gun crime and the gun violence you associate the US with, and also like muggings and like robbery. Like here, we'll have to wait for the details. All you can say, like, it's condolences to his family and friends. But also, what has happened is in Canada, there are two other things. One is you've had a lot of immigration, legal immigration in Canada, right? And two is what has happened is you've seen a lot because of this immigration in the city center, etc. areas, right? There could be potential hate crime because people who are not doing very well for themselves, they find these immigrants, they feel they're taking away their jobs, etc. And like this kind of leads to more resentment, as well as you've seen everywhere oil prices are up, inflation is up. So some of the people, this is where sometimes crime rises, right? It happens. So it's a very sad thing. This is not what we really associate Canada with. And hopefully there's a huge Indian diaspora in all of North America, but specifically like Canada. So hopefully this is dealt with in a reasonable way, and it doesn't spill over into like a worse law and order situation, right? Like so yeah, fingers crossed, and hope it was just an isolated incident.
Yeah. No, plenty of Indians in Canada as well, and plenty continue to migrate because of the very friendly immigration policies that Canada has. And this is certainly, surprising and shocking. I really hope that, justice is delivered. Well, moving on. Akshata Murthy, the daughter of Mr. Narayan Murthy, has been caught up in a tax row in the UK. Ms. Murthy is accused of avoiding up to $20 million in UK tax. However, she stated that she's exempt from paying taxes on overseas income in the UK due to her status as a non-domiciled citizen. It's interesting because she's also the wife of UK's Finance Minister Rishi Sunak. This controversy comes at a time when Sunak's popularity is at an all-time low after backlash over his mini budget in the UK Parliament. Ms. Murthy has collected about £54.5 million in dividends from Infosys. However, due to her non-domicile status, she was able to save about 20 million in taxes. Abhishek, what do you make of this?
Yeah, so this is an interesting episode currently going on in British politics. It started off gaining sort of prominence when it emerged. So, India's role in this whole Russia-Ukraine conflict has been gaining sort of disproportionate attention, right? And so one of the things that the British media sort of started lapping up was that, Infosys has operations in Russia, and, Sunak is married to the daughter of one of the founders of Infosys, right? So that's how this whole angle came in. They sort of blew it totally out of proportion in saying that, Infosys has a big presence in Russia and all that. Well, in reality, we all know it's really minimal, right? It hardly does any business in Russia. So that was the way it all sort of started. And then apparently someone has leaked to the press the tax domicile status of Akshata Murthy, which basically tells that she has decided to basically not become a British citizen, as far as I understand, but claim to be a non-domicile resident there, which means she pays British tax on income in UK and then tax in other countries for her overseas income. So her uh, Infosys dividend, which would be a very significant number, simply because as the daughter of NRN, she holds about, I think, 0.9% stake in Infosys, right? So, yeah, I think the British public, the British media made it a big story in the last few days, and apparently now she has come up with a statement declaring that she will be changing her tax status and will be paying taxes in Britain for all her income. So yeah, interesting. I think there's some other controversy emerging about the green card status of both of them. So I was just, as I was telling, just reading the Guardian, and they have a question that when you take up green card status, you pledge allegiance to the United States, right? And so they're asking, why was she okay to take green card there but not okay to pledge allegiance to the UK? So all sorts of interesting things. I think the bigger background is, of course, that Rishi Sunak is like the number 2 guy in the Conservative Party today, or maybe one of the top 3-4. Arguably you could say Priti Patel is also a contender for the number 2 future PM slot. And I suppose it makes sense for and as these the party politics is much more cutthroat in the UK, just like the US, right, where people have to actually compete against each other to get to the top job in the party. And so it sort of makes sense for both opponents of his party as well as opponents within the party, I suppose, to sort of make to target Rishi Sunak in this controversy. So I think that's what is sort of going on. Apart from the whole underlying current of, I suppose, racism that we have seen in how the Western media has covered India's role in the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. So that's all. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe Nirav, you could add something.
No, so yeah, like here, I just wanted to talk about the non-domicile status. So this is like a loophole which UK has used for like a very long time. A lot of the Russian oligarchs, Middle Eastern princes, they all live most of their time in UK. And so what it does is that, given that their main source of income has nothing to do with UK. For example, like Akshata Murthy being a passive shareholder in Infosys, not being actively involved, it has nothing to do with the UK. She's owns shares in a company which is somewhere else. And 2 is, if she has the non-domicile status says that you do not have plans to take up citizenship, or you do not have plans to live in the UK for a long time, you're just a temporary resident here, which sometimes can be said as that if she has plans to move back to India as per her like tax filings, that is like a big red flag. If someone like Rishi Sunak, who's the Chancellor of the Exchequer, does his incentive align with the British public, right? And I think this, if he wants to become the Prime Minister, is going to be like an albatross on his neck, that any policy that he does, say with respect to India, apart from having Indian heritage, because if say UK were to do like an FTA or help with some sort of like data or IT sharing or something of that sort, does that policy help like his billionaire father-in-law or like nearly billionaire wife, right? Because of the direct shareholding. So I think that also comes into question, and politics is brutal everywhere. And within the party itself, obviously, the people who are more aligned with Labour are gunning for Rishi Sunak, but also people within the party who look at him as competition for the top job, right? So I think politics is brutal everywhere. This is what it is, and now it is for them to come over it. So now Akshata Murthy has said that she will pay taxes like a UK resident, and I'm not sure if
people are asking whether it is only going forward or will she pay all her past years.
So past years as well. So I think even if she changes it, this loophole has been used widely. So it is a fact, and a lot of them, even if they're working in the UK, they kind of the days they spend abroad, they try and take a tax rebate on that. So anyway, so either the government, like maybe unlike the US, which kind of taxes your global income once you're a resident there, a green card or a citizen, this is remains to be seen if UK actually changes those laws, because they benefit a lot from the spending from specifically the Middle Eastern royal families and the princes who spend most of their time there, right? So it depends what happens, but it's a witch hunt for Rishi Sunak, that is for sure. If he comes out of it stronger, kudos to him.
On that note, I mean, for some of us who haven't really followed UK politics very closely, what is Rishi Sunak's chances of being the prime minister of the country someday?
So earlier they were pretty high, as Abhishek mentioned, right? He was within the top 2-3. Boris Johnson's popularity was falling during COVID, whereas Rishi Sunak's popularity was increasing. The couple of budgets that he presented with higher spending and like more allocations to NHS, and so trying to keep the economy running. So he got a lot of positive press for it, right? So he was seen as potentially, like as he said, like between the Preeti Patel, Rishi Sunak, obviously there were a few things. There hasn't been an Indian origin prime minister in the UK. There could be some resistance against that. But across the channel, like in Ireland, you've had an Indian origin or half Indian, right? Varadkar as a prime minister. And so similarly, you could see that he had a very good chance because he's born and raised in Britain, right? Of Indian parents. So that was a great chance. But the second thing is also his background of being in Goldman Sachs and then private equity, and so you're seen as like the very rich elite, which probably anyways would have reduced his chances. That he's probably out of touch, has a billionaire father-in-law who is Indian. So now are all your policies aligned for the British public? Or well, Donald Trump had a father-in-law who was not, or he had actually two fathers-in-law who were not American, right? So that didn't cause that much of a controversy because they weren't billionaires. But yeah, this is something which is, you would call a handicap for him. But who knows? To get the top job, you have to jump through a lot of obstacles, and maybe he gets it someday.
Yeah, I mean, Trump is a maverick, right? I mean,
exactly.
You can't compare him to anyone else.
One Czech, one wife was Czech and one was Slovenian. The middle one was American. So yeah, so at least two father-in-laws who are like overseas citizens.
Hemang Palan has some interesting comments on YouTube. He says, are there no right-wing media ecosystem at all to call out the hypocrisy? I think they might be complicit.
There is, so I think in the UK, you would say like BBC is a little bit left-leaning, Guardian is very left-leaning, whereas Telegraph and I think the Daily Mail are more right-leaning, and then the Sun is the tabloid, which is like probably the most read. Even you see difference between say BBC and Sky or ITV. So I think there is.
So you have to understand that the more right-leaning parts of Britain and British media also do not like Sunak, right?
Yes.
So, he's like, and while the left feels he is too rich, so like he's caught on both sides on this case, right?
Right. Yeah, more interesting question. He says, can we attract Russian oligarchs with to bring their wealth from UK to India.
Very unlikely, but yeah.
Yeah. All right, moving on. We spoke about the Sri Lankan economic crisis, I think maybe the last weekly or the weekly before that. India is now helping Sri Lanka, which is in the midst of that economic crisis. Recently, India announced $1 billion as a line of credit to Sri Lanka to help shore up the sinking economy and keep their food prices and fuel costs under check. So far, India has supplied 270,000 tons of fuel to ease the power crisis in the sinking economy. Protests are also being rallied against the Rajapaksa family of politicians, who are being blamed for the crisis. Scarce supplies of food and fuel, along with the record inflation and blackouts, have inflicted widespread misery in Sri Lanka's worst economic crisis since independence from Britain in 1948. Nirav, we spoke about this earlier, and we also alluded to the fact that India should probably, share a helping hand, right? It's heartening to see that we're doing just that.
No, absolutely. I think, see, one is Sri Lanka, we share not just like we are neighbors, you have a lot of old cultural heritage. To be fair, like even in terms of like society, like a lot of like the most frequent team to visit has to play cricket as well, right? So I think that is one thing. Two is like it had like kind of drifted a little bit towards China, and even from a geopolitical or a strategic military sense, we rather have our neighbors who are friendlier to us, right? So that is also there. And second thing is, during the whole India and Sri Lanka relationship spoiled a lot during the whole LTTE crisis, right? And Rajiv Gandhi was shot dead, etc. And then we mended it since then. And again, then they drifted away towards China. So one is, when your neighbors are not doing well, it's really not good to not lend a helping hand. Irrespective whether you're trying to, you don't want to be like a Shylock and extract a pound of flesh back. Like that's not the case at all. But you want a neighbor which is friendly. Two, I think, is we also need to learn lessons, and Indian media needs to highlight that how like Sri Lanka, which was supposed to be the next economic superpower, descended into such a situation. So too much of debt, very quickly moving to 100% organic farming, and too much wasteful spending, right? All of these things make you more fragile. That the shock about tourism collapsing due to COVID and oil prices going higher totally derailed the economy, right? So we need to learn as well that we cannot be that profligate in spending, need to tighten our belts, etc. And yes, there has been direct financial aid, there's been a currency swap line, there has been food and fuel, both of them have been supplied, right? So that's a very big positive. I think this is a heartening sign, and it's like you've seen like a lot of ex-Sri Lankan cricketers tweeting thanks to like the Indian help, as well as like tweeting about the crisis in Sri Lanka. But off the record, like if you just see on Instagram, there are some members of the Rajapaksa family who are actually showing off their wealth. So one of them, the nephew, Bhanuka Rajapaksa, actually plays cricket for, I think, Gujarat Titans or one of Punjab in the IPL. He's been highlighting the crisis in Sri Lanka, but the other part has been like, it's a bit of let them eat cake moment. It's really bad. It's really sad. Thankfully, we don't see that much within India. So even though there might be like really rich elites when the country was suffering through COVID. So anyways, I think this is quite a nice positive thing that India is helping them out. And hopefully Sri Lanka comes out of the crisis and they themselves figure out that what really went wrong. They have an honest assessment themselves. And it's a small country, small population. So hopefully like it recovers well. India adds a little bit of help on like the IMF part, where usually the IMF helps the foreign creditors a lot more instead of the country allowed to default and grow its way out. So hopefully India kind of like helps Sri Lanka to navigate that as well.
There were a few interesting comments as well, right, from Rahul Gandhi on how India is actually Sri Lanka, but then we've not revealed it or something like that, right? So
I think Rahul Gandhi has being in an opposition party, he actually has vested interests. So see, India has become like very polarized. So every politician will want to kind of criticize that. So obviously they'll be throwing whatever it is, right, to try and put the other government down so that they can come in power. So whatever fair comment, I personally think India has navigated the whole COVID crisis and this whole oil price shock reasonably well. Uh, Maybe you can say, okay, it was a political maneuver. They didn't hike oil prices for a long time, and then they increased 80 to 85 paisa a day for a month. So kind of you reached hiked by 25 rupees, which is what it is. India actually did not cut fuel taxes, or during COVID they raised taxes, built up a big buffer so that you did not see suddenly oil price collapse domestically. People used to get cheaper prices and then raising them a lot more later. And India kind of played it counter-cyclically, raised taxes when the fuel prices were low. When the fuel prices rose, they've cut taxes a bit. So I think India has navigated it in quite a good manner. India continues to be a poor country. That is fine. And we are a lot less fragile because one of the companies, in Indian economy, the big drivers and the big taxpayers, one section are the IT exporters who benefit when the rupee is weak, right? So we've got a diversified economy. We've done like reasonably good things. Agriculture, we grow a lot more food than we consume. So maybe I think the farm laws were needed. Maybe we need to kind of diversify our diets also away from rice and wheat or whatever. But we've not gone the crazy path where suddenly you go and do all organic farming, right? Maybe if you do it in a few states, few locations, few districts, see how it turns out, right? I think Sikkim in India does 100% organic farming. That is fine. It has a market for itself. But like a whole jump, we need to remember India was having like a food crisis in the 60s before Norman Borlaug came and we had the Green Revolution. So my parents actually have memories of that. So we cannot just suddenly take that leap. And hopefully we all learn from the crisis, learn from others' mistake and not make them ourselves. So yeah, I think that's all what I can say.
So Prasanna had an interesting tweet where he compared the Sri Lankan economy to Kerala, the Kerala state economy actually. And that was pretty interesting.
The difference again,
including
like I think
the
Kerala,
reliance on tourism and
one positive thing which goes for Kerala is you have a lot of people from Kerala working in the Middle East, and there's a remittance is much more, which Sri Lanka doesn't have that. See, maybe other things might be similar, give or take, but Sri Lanka doesn't have that either. So, in terms of ability to weather a storm, Sri Lanka is a little more fragile.
All right, moving on. The first case of COVID XE variant has been found in Gujarat. Last week, WHO discovered a new COVID mutant XE, which may be more transmissible than the BA.2 sublineage of the virus. One case of the XE variant has also been detected in the state. The health ministry denied a report that the XE variant was contracted by an Indian traveler, stating the genomic constitution of the detected virus does not correlate with XE. Meanwhile, in Shanghai, the entire city has gone under a strict lockdown due to a resurgence of over 130,000 positive cases. Over 2,000 cases are being reported every day. Nirav, Abhishek, I mean, I've been seeing some threads on Twitter, especially from Shanghai. I mean, it seems like, 2020 all over again, it feels like, almost.
Yeah, I
Abhishek?
think the stories coming out of Shanghai are quite disturbing, and the Chinese model of combating COVID continues to be that they want zero COVID, which almost all of the rest of the world had discarded long back. Now they think they have the state capacity and state power to do all these things. So essentially what is happening is there is no home quarantine. The moment someone is testing positive, they are taking them away to some quarantine facility. Obviously, with overcrowding happening now, with many cases, those facilities themselves are no longer very, good or hygienic or whatever. So public anger is also building up due to that. And again, if you imagine, families where children are getting separated from their parents, and And moreover, all this is happening to people who are pretty like having asymptomatic cases or mild cases. So you can imagine the frustration they would be feeling, right? So, and then of course there are news of food scarcity, etc. So pretty weird kind of things happening. I would recommend folks to check out an interview of one of these people, patients, on the channel Unheard. Quite interesting to actually learn from someone who is actually dealing with the situation on the ground. So they are in fact looking for 4 straight negative cases as well for release. Now just imagine how long that can take, right? So the person was saying that she has not even seen a single person get released in the last few days. So it's quite, and if you remember, in India we don't even wait for a single case, right?
Mm.
Sorry, single negative test, because it doesn't make sense sometimes, right? You will keep getting those false positives or whatever. You may be perfectly fine, but you can still test positive, right? So I don't know. I mean, the Chinese model is the Chinese model. We
I
can't
think
really say much,
Yeah,
but
but
that's quite strange. Yeah.
it
so.
puzzles me, right? I mean, because the mortality is supposedly low and the
Yeah.
symptoms
Yeah.
are mild. So why are
So
they
I
like?
think so. There are a couple of reasons. I think you look at like so. One is the XE variant in India, right? I think India will keep getting, or all over the world, you might keep getting variants as like the flu variants. Hopefully, they are milder, and our vaccines are reasonably good enough to give you protection against like extreme sickness or like hospitalization or even deaths, right? And India is allowed like booster shots for everyone over 18 from today, I think. So that's like a fantastic news as well. So that part, yes. So India, pretty much all of the West has kind of agreed to learn to live with COVID. That if you get COVID after a few days, if you move on with life and you take it as a sickness. The problem, so there are a few things in China. One is that they were too early to be triumphalist and say that, oh, we've done a very good job and the West is all, see, look at them suffering. And there are a lot of, on Weibo, there were a lot of negative portrayal about India. So very huge negative portrayal about India and the West in the US. Say that, see, these countries don't know how to manage it. We have like zero COVID policy and we can't tolerate anything. The thing with getting 100% in anything, right, takes a lot of effort. And sometimes the cost of getting it is a lot
yeah.
more than tolerating, say, 90%, 95%, 99% efficiency, right? This goes for anything. So that is one thing. Two is, this is a year where Xi Jinping's second term is ending in October. And he's amended the rule which had term limits. So he's looking for his third term. And now, as per the term limits has been removed, so long as the Communist Party, the Politburo keeps electing him inside by consensus, he can stay for life, pretty much like Mao did. So that's another thing where he doesn't want, and like the policy that they've used in Hong Kong or like in Shanghai has been, they call it dynamic zero, where anything pops up, they shut down. Shanghai has two parts of the city. So there's a river Huangpu, so Pudong. So Pudong is east. So east of the river was shut down first, and Puxi. So all the business district, all of that is there. Is west. So Puxi is west of the river. They've now shut down the whole city, which is now, when you shut down 100%, it's very difficult to kind of have some food supply chains, and they're like isolating pets, isolating small kids. There have been reports or like pets are being killed as well, because they could be carriers and mutations could come through them. So it's been very, very brutal to achieve something which you could say that there is a trade-off, that do you want like zero COVID or you want a
So
normal
the
life.
other thing
And
is,
second is, they don't need to fix re-election from the public.
the other
So
thing is Shanghai is like a city which is well integrated globally, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
when things were happening in some of their smaller cities, we got to
yes,
know much less. But now Shanghai news can't be sort of contained,
yes,
right? It
yes,
will
yes,
go out. So that's
exactly.
also
So
something
like
like
when
that.
Wuhan was brutally locked
Yeah.
down, we did not know much.
Yes.
Shanghai has a lot of expats living in there. You have a lot of
I mean,
Shanghai
people are giving
who are like studying
interviews
abroad, worked abroad.
from from these quarantine facilities, and they're not able to control it. I mean, I was actually worried about that person. She was showing her face and giving an
Yes.
interview. It's
Yeah, absolutely. Also, with like
quite
100%
scary.
testing of the city,
Yeah.
sometimes what happens is when you go out and queue up outside, even if when you're given time slots, even if you don't have COVID, you will get it once you go
can
there,
pick up, yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's what it is. Second thing is, statistically, in other countries where, like in the Middle East or in Latin America, where a lot of people were given Sinovac or Sinopharm, uh, statistically, the Chinese vaccines are weaker, especially versus the variants. So in other countries, they've gotten boosters of either AstraZeneca or Pfizer, Moderna, or like a lot of other ones, right? And then with the booster, kind of they've done okay. So like it's not as if like the vaccines are not effective at all, but they have lower efficacy. And even if they are good to prevent death or serious hospitalization, the whole concept of like having real zero, this is affecting global trade. The ports in Shanghai are stuck, and supply chain bottlenecks will remain. So I believe at least till October, they have the National Party Congress. 1st October 1949 is the day the Communist Party took over rule in China, and then they have like some grand celebrations. The whole week is typically a holiday, 1st to 7th of October. And after that, they have a National Party Congress where the team for the next 5 years is decided. And also there are talks about there being different factions within the Chinese Communist Party, and there is some kind of difference of opinions within there. And this is also shown as a show of strength, or to show the faction of Xi Jinping is showing its power and showing that, that they're going to clamp down the disease altogether. I believe that it's a very uphill battle to fight with COVID. Maybe the best form of immunization is you get a mild version of the disease, which kind of keeps you immune from any future variant. So it is what it is. I think that's another crisis. Another one where we felt that, yes, India did struggle in the second wave, the peak of it, but we've kind of lived with it and learned to move on. So that's one thing.
We also had the precautionary dose open up for 18 years and above, right? Yeah, interesting. And I was seeing a Twitter poll. In fact, I mean, of course, all of this is only anecdotal and very limited data, by no means accurate. But the poll was interesting, right? I mean, it had a few tens of thousands of votes, and about 30 or 40% of them had said that they'll not take the precautionary dose, right? So yeah.
Though that again, like what might happen is a lot of people in India have gotten COVID, whether they knew it or not. And second thing is, now Bharat Biotech and Serum Institute, they have like a huge manufacturing capacity which can be ramped up, because people's opinions may change. Right now, when you say, okay, there's almost like no disease, why should I take another booster shot? Maybe things change. You also have like pills which control COVID once you get the disease. And with the policy of like allowing home quarantine, it doesn't stretch your resources too much. Also, if anything, COVID has taught you that no strategy is permanent. You've got to figure things out along the way.
Yeah.
So hopefully, Indian authorities and authorities all over the world, they learn to live with it and learn to, I would say dynamic zero is too tough, but like dynamically managing COVID is the right strategy.
Absolutely. And we did an episode with the author Priyam Gandhi Modi on how India managed the crisis. Do check it out. It's a very comprehensive one. Talks about various facets of COVID management over the last couple of years. Yeah, that's something that you guys should definitely check out. Finally, earlier this week, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy engaged in an interview with Arnab Goswami. During this conversation, President Zelenskyy invited India to become a security guarantor for Ukraine. He also stated that the security guarantees and talks with Putin could be a parallel process. He also spoke about the war being waged by Russia, pointing out the fake media narrative being propagated by Putin. Zelenskyy stressed that nobody can rule out the fact that Russia is employing nuclear weapons in this war. I find it strange that, he's talking to an Indian anchor, right, on an Indian news show. But it seems like, It seems like outreach basically to gather world support.
Also, one thing I think, see, you must remember, Zelensky was an actor and a comedian, but like he's very articulate, and he's actually fluent in Ukrainian, Russian, and English, right? So that's one thing. Two is when you get news via like a spokesperson or via like multiple channels, and like by the time like India gets any sort of Ukrainian news, it goes through like the whole set of like different filters. So probably, so here, what Zelensky is trying to do is India is one of the big countries in G20, which has kind of abstained from the vote in the UN General Assembly. So against Russia. Anyway, Russia has the veto. So India voting one way or another wouldn't have changed anything. China also did. He believes that India can be like a neutral party which can help mediate this whole crisis and war. See, India has its own constraints. Like war obviously is like a bad thing. Civilians getting hurt or like losing lives is like, it's a very tragic thing, right? But India unfortunately has its own constraints about being dependent on Russia for arms, and also being dependent on energy imports, where now India, to keep India on its side, Russia is offering a $35 per barrel discount, right? So that is one thing. Russia has a lot of leverage even over the West by energy exports. So Zelensky, what he's trying to do is trying to change the opinion, and instead of reaching out to like the Indian External Affairs Ministry or directly to PM Modi, what he's trying to do is, given India is a democracy, if enough Indian people change their opinion, then eventually the politicians will have to change their opinion, right? So he's trying to reach out to like a global audience, like, and he believes that this was one channel that he could reach out to like Indian audience, right? And he's offered for talks with Putin, etc. So he's trying to apply pressure on Russia or on Indian leaders in a different way. I think Zelensky has to do what is best for himself. Indian leaders have to do what is best for themselves. Indian people, if they really believe, I think, to be fair, Ukraine is a country which is very further out, and taking sides on either side very vocally might kind of misfire, right? It is like India needs to be neutral and needs to do what is best for itself. The whole situation is quite complicated. Few things which he mentioned. So what Zelensky mentioned was that the history of relationship India has is with the USSR, and Ukraine was the second biggest chunk and the second biggest population part of USSR after Russia, right? So it's not just Russia. Ukraine has had a history of relationship with India. Second thing, he kind of said that he was willing to talk to Putin directly and try and resolve whatever issues were there. So yes, see, in the fog of war, there is a little bit of propaganda from everyone, and Zelensky is playing his cards. I think he's done like a smart job for himself, right? Yes, like it's a good thing, and it's a good thing to come directly. And him being like a very articulate person and fluent in English as well, that helped. So the thing that he chose, like say Arnab, and not like say like a Doordarshan, which is an official media, or any of the other media houses, probably felt that is a bigger reach, right? Or who was willing to talk to him. So
I don't
that's
think
another.
Doordarshan was ever going to be an option.
Yes,
Question was why Arnab and why not say NDTV, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I suppose
whoever reached out
to which has the bigger numbers. So.
Bigger numbers, yes. So I think he's trying to do that. It's available on YouTube. So it's for actually this interview with Arnab has been doing the rounds of like Chinese social media as well, because I have like Chinese friends in Singapore. They pointed it out to me, and now it's on YouTube. It's freely available to all the English speaking world, right? Which is like a much bigger population versus say the European world only, right? Which was like kind of very active or actively looking at it because it's on their doorstep. So he's trying to change public opinion, and he's trying to do the best for himself. The West has kind of paid lip service, like they've given him some arms and some like military equipment. They've not really sent soldiers on ground. The West continues to buy oil from Russia. Europe continues to buy oil from Russia. US continues to buy uranium from Russia. A lot of the sanctions have been kind of, let's put it, they've been lame, to be frank, right? So they've not affected Russia that much, or like changed the course of war in one way or another. This is being like a much longer war than probably even maybe Russia expected. So who knows? But yeah, I think this is probably a template that other leaders might use in the future. That you reach out to citizens of other countries, which are democracies. See, why didn't he do it, say, for China? Because even if Chinese public opinion changes, they don't elect their own leaders, right? So leaders may choose or may not choose. There you have to reach to talk to the leadership directly. The public opinion doesn't matter as much. In a democracy, public opinion definitely matters. And this is a reflection of India's weight in geopolitics as well, right? So that is one more thing. I think India needs to show leadership and try and mediate peace in whichever way, but maintain neutrality without affecting its own interests. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. No, props to Zelenskyy on media management, right? I mean, he's been on point, I think, since the war itself, right? The other thing is, I think, props to Arnab, really. I mean, the guy is soon becoming an international guy, right? I mean, he was recently viral for his comments against NATO, basically, right? And how Russia has been supportive of India and so on. I think that clip was circulated far and wide, including Chinese channels, Chinese Twitter handles sharing it, and so on, right? So yeah, I mean, Indian anchors have been in the international news. I mean, I would say, right? We had, of course, I mean, Rahul Shivshankar go viral for completely different reasons as well. So well, that brings us to the end of the Bharatvaarta Weekly for today. We have a fantastic episode coming up with Nirav, of course, and Rahul Bajoria of Barclays. So we're going to be talking about free trade agreements. We've discussed this last week with the India-Australia free trade agreement, and then we had the India-UAE free trade agreement as well some time back. So we're going to discuss the significance of this and how it could be an economic reform 2.0, as Nirav calls it. Right. So this is going to be a very comprehensive episode. You should definitely check it out later this week. So that's it, folks. Thank you so much again for joining. From Abhishek, Nirav, and myself. Do stay safe, take care, and see you next week.